Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining to my presentation. I hope you had a good new year. My name is Felix Schlicht. I'm 19 years old. I'm from Munich in Germany, and I do stereo photography since mid 2020. So get your viewers out because I had a little fun making the whole presentation 3D. So you don't even have to put down your viewers or stop previewing. The title of my presentation is Capturing the Death of High Mountains, going along with the gallery I made for the stereo site about 2 months ago. So I hope you're not too afraid of heights because today we're going to hike some mountains. A quick note for you, all of the stereos I show are sequential and captured with my smartphone. At first, I will show you some camera settings I like to use. Then I will show you some tips and tricks I'm using to take hyperstereos of mountains. And at last, I will show you some of my favorite hiking stereos. Next slide, please. So let's start with camera settings. Not only for hyperstereos, but also for normal stereos, I find it really useful to have some kind of crosshair to already align the images while shooting them. If your camera app supports this, it's really handy to enable the artificial horizon. It not only helps you to aim the camera, but you also see a small number which shows the amount of degrees your phone is tilted, so you can align this too. If your camera doesn't have this feature, you can enable a grid on nearly every phone, which is a good alternative. Next slide, please. So with the white line representing the artificial horizon or some part of the grid, I always aim it at a remarkable object, for example, a rock or summit, or in this case, the top of a hill, so I can remember easily where it was in the first picture and then aim it at the same object in the other pictures to directly get aligned images. With this method, most of the time, I don't even have to crop the images on the top or bottom, but only on the side to get a good stereo window. What can also become handy is being able to lock the exposure and the ISO sensitivity to get the same colors on each photo, but most of the time you'll be fine without this. Next slide, please. So when shooting pictures of whole mountains, the walking time between the two images can be quite long, especially when it's a large mountain and a steep and dangerous path with climb sections. For example, the images for this hyper are about 100 meters apart, and between the images, there were about 3 minutes of walking time, which is very much time for things in the image to change and cause rivalries. So the art is to get good balance between enough depth and few rivalries. Next slide, please. So the most obvious trick to achieve better hyperstereos is simply being fast. When the path is really safe, sometimes I run to get the second image as fast as possible. And by doing this, I promise you'll get funny looks from other hikers. But never run along risky paths with deep drops to the side or impassable terrain. It's very dangerous. Especially for mountain hyperstereos with baselines of more than 10 meters, it's obligatory to take more than just 2 pictures. Take one every few meters to be able to choose the best matching baseline afterwards. Next slide, please. Now we will talk a little bit about weather conditions. And when I say good weather or bad weather, I mean good for taking stereos, because there's a German saying which says there is no bad weather, there is just bad clothing. So good weather is sunny without clouds or just a few clouds far in the distance. It gives you good illumination and you won't have to deal with the issues of clouds that are clouds are creating. A small negative point is that if it's sunny, you'll probably won't be the only one on the mountain, so you'll have to search for a summit without many people on it, because people are always moving and creating rivalries. Next slide, please. So in my experience, the best weather for mountain stereos with enormous baselines is when the sky is covered with high altitude fog, where no clouds can be distinguished from each other. This gives a very steady illumination, even if you need to climb a little path and have to walk 10 minutes between the images. And this also removes the problem of Earth's rotation, which I'll show later. On top of that, you'll probably be alone on the mountain, so you don't have to deal with moving people. Next slide, please. So this, what you see there, is the worst weather you can encounter if you want to take mountain stereos. So when it's sunny with some clouds in the sky, the clouds are casting very ugly shadows on the mountains, which will either appear like floating or flickering, which destroy the whole image. Additionally, here in the particular image, you can, Pascal, push once. And yeah, you can see that the clouds appear as if they were in front of the mountain. Even in reality, they are behind it because they moved. And you'll get similar problems with the clouds if the sky is covered and the clouds can be distinguished from each other. And much wind makes these phenomena even worse. Next slide, please. So to sum up the hazards you encounter the hazards you can encounter the most are the shadows of the clouds, like here. Next picture, please. And clouds behind the mountain appearing in front of it, like as you can see here. And the third, the opposite way, clouds in front of a mountain appearing behind it. Or next picture. Or clouds that change their shape, size, or orientation, or that appear between two images, as seen here. Pascal, you can push once. On the left picture, there's no cloud. On the right picture, it just appeared. Yeah, next, please. And like you can see here, the image seems fine, but when you zoom in, Pascal, press once, you can see that the shadow has slightly moved because it was about 4 to 5 minutes between the two photos. And the Earth's rotation, because of the Earth's rotation, the shadows moved and now they seem like floating. Next image, please. So after all these hazards, you'll probably ask if there are any ways to counter these. And yes, there are. Very simple, it's just waiting for the clouds to disappear or time your shot between two clouds if there are only a few every couple of kilometers, which are moving fairly fast. And if you're good at it, you could also manipulate the image afterwards, for example, by removing the cloud that has entered the second image. Now, Pascal, press once. I tried to show this, remove it. So, but I'm not really good at Photoshop. But if you are, this is a good option. So next slide, please. Cloud movement, you can deal fairly easy with, is clouds moving parallel to the baseline. So maybe you have tried this before. If you don't move and shoot an object twice with a little bit of time in between, you can see that that moving clouds appear as if they are farther in the background or foreground, depending on which image you put left or right. And we can make use of this effect when shooting mountain stereos by actively deciding whether to take the left or the right picture first. Next slide, please. So usually the speed of the clouds is way faster than how you can move. So I came up with a good rule which works most of the time. If the clouds are behind the mountains, move along with them. So in this example, shoot the left image first, then the right image. Next slide, please. And if the clouds are in front of the mountain, you have to move the opposite way. The clouds are moving. So shoot the right image first, then the left one. And with this technique, clouds behind a mountain are appearing even further behind it, and clouds in front of a mountain are appearing nearer than they really are. And this will remove the problem of clouds that are clipping through mountains. Next slide, please. So, and when the clouds don't even touch the landscape, it doesn't really matter in which direction you walk because they won't clip into anything. But you can use the method actively to decide if you want them to appear closer or further away. In this case, I think the stereo would have looked better if it had a little more depth and if the images were taken in the opposite order, because the clouds are a little too dominant in this front position. Yes, next slide, please. So, and if the clouds are moving towards or away from you, unfortunately, this technique doesn't work. It works to a certain degree of diagonal movement, but not infinite. So my best tip I can give you is be fast or turn 90 degrees to take a picture of something else. But if you found a good solution to this, let me know after the presentation. Next slide, please. So now I will show you some general good places to look out for taking mountain hypers. The first are exposed bridges. They have some benefits stereos of them, if you can move a little bit sideways, look pretty cool because you can see the ridge wriggle into the distance. And the even better thing is it's the perfect opportunity to take a hyperstereo of the mountains to the left and to the right of the ridge. Next slide, please. Yeah, like this one, which was directly left to it. And next slide, please. Or this one, which I also took along a ridge. Yeah, next one, please. But if the walking time between, you can also do good hyperstereos of when you have two peaks where the walking time between them is very short and they are close to each other. If you push next slide, not slide, but yes, thank you. So here I did a Google Earth view of the two peaks, small peaks, from which I took the stereo. Yeah, next slide, please. So when you go on path along a mountain, it's always good to only have few plants on to the side and as few as possible objects in the foreground. And less incline is also better, but a little incline can always be corrected afterwards by tilting. The brain is also quite forgiving there. And at last, it's good to have open terrain, no impassable paths to move quickly. Next slide, please. So for the winter, you can take stereos while backcountry skiing. The big advantage is that you can be really fast between the two shots. I took this image while skiing. The baseline is approximately 200 meters, which is the mountain stereo with the largest baseline I took so far. If you zoom in, Pascal, press once. Yeah, you still can't really see the scale, but if you zoom once more, yeah, those little dots are trees. Yeah, and if you press twice again, Pascal, you can see the whole image again. Yeah. So, and now I will show you some of my favorite hyperstereos I've taken so far. Next slide, please. Yes, this is from Austria. Next slide. This is also from Austria. So many of my hyperstereos I've also uploaded on my Instagram are from this region because there I spent my summer holiday this last year. Next slide, please. Yeah, this too. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is near from where I live. It's a small hut just beneath the summit. And next slide. This is the summit above the hut, and I love sunsets on the summit above a sea of clouds and the nice light you get just after the sunset. So next. This is again from Austria. Next one. Yeah, and this is a good example for when you're in a valley where you can easily go along. It's also a very good opportunity to get some nice shots. Next one. So this is quite a fun stereo because the cloud layers were moving in opposite directions. But it doesn't look too bad because in reality, the condensed stripe of the plane was behind the other clouds. Next one. So this is a stereo I did while ski hiking up a mountain. You can see that I had to tilt it a bit because the terrain I hiked on was quite steep. You can see it in the houses that are a little bit tilted. So next one. So steep mountain cliffs look gorgeous too, unfortunately with the green area on the left picture because of the reflections of the lens. Next one. So beside from hyperstereos, hiking offers also many good opportunities to do macro shots. For example, mushrooms. Next one. Or poisonous mushrooms. Or next one, fire salamanders in Slovakia. Next one, or butterflies, which quite often decide to land on my backpack. And also very stylistic for the Alps, the different kind of flowers. Here it's enzian. The next one is a thistle. So, and beside from that, you can also do the normal baseline, so humanly baseline stereos, like trees with a lake in the background. Next one too, yes. Or if you go camping, also of your tents. Next one too. Or in Croatia, we found a cave. So the entrance looks from the inside on the next picture, really cool. And if you have a bright flash, you can even take a photo on the inside. The next one. Yeah. And what's also quite cool are the dripstones and salt formation you can find in these caves. The next one. And the one after this. Yeah. Yeah, so and if it rains, I think one more. Yeah, reflections and puddles, I love them. They look really cool. Or signs, the next one. Yeah. And in the winter, when you're near a waterfall, you get some icicles. And in the Alps, you also find some ruins sometimes. And I don't know if this is only in the Alps or also in other parts of the world, but on the top of mountains, there are always crosses. Yeah, this is a bit too hyper, I think, but I love things a little bit too hyper. The next one too. These are actually from Italy. And the next one, so if you go backcountry skiing, you could also photograph the skis. And yeah, rock formations on the next one and the one after that. Yeah, and at last, if you're lucky and get a good shot, you could also do sequentials of waterfalls, but there you always have the problem that water is moving. So thank you very much for your attention. That's it. If you want to learn a little bit more of the technical and historical side of hyperstereos, I can really recommend reading Pascal's blog post on the stereo side, where you can get with this QR code. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask.